Hey, how's it going, Matt? This is Michael, your English 103A instructor for winter quarter 2011. So I went over the entire paper here. Let's see what we have here. So I'm going to give you 70 out of 100. I think there are some strengths and some weaknesses with the paper itself. First of all, probably in the beginning on page 1, before part 1, you actually need an introduction that kind of sets up what's going to happen in the entire paper. I don't think you've really done that. You start off with part 1, in blindside, you point out a difference. You're saying here point it out, but I would say points out. Present tense is going to work better, but that's a whole nother thing. You definitely need polishing. You need to polish the essay a lot more. You need more time to edit the paper. It's not very cleanly written. Also, that introduction I was telling you about. Okay, looks like you did part 1. Part 2 could be better organized. I mean, you could have almost done this. You said here, the blind side contains 2 separate stories. One details the trials and tribulations of a young black teenager named Michael Orr. The other details the evolution of the position Michael will ultimately play in the game of football. That. Now, if you get to the next paragraph, you begin with the blind side tells the story of Michael Orr, who was discovered a football prodigy. Why not start off with what you said? Look at, first of all, in the first part of the book, it focuses around the trials of the black teenager named Michael Orr. And focus on that first. And then get into the next paragraph talks about the evolution of the position that he actually takes. So what I'm saying is the body paragraphs of your summary, they need to better match what you say you're going to do in the beginning of the summary. So your summary could be better organized. What else here? Again, let me take a look, page 3. I'll go to page 4 for a minute. I think here, when you get to paragraph 6, you say Michael Orr, who looks like a walking refrigerator, is recruited into private Wingate High School on a scholarship. What's the purpose of this paragraph? How does it relate back to your introduction? And why don't you use the point of view of the writer, not from your own point of view, because it sounds like you're saying this, not the writer. So I think those body paragraphs need to be better connected. Part 3. I don't think you've really answered the question here. It says here in the beginning, it says, when it comes to the topic of Michael Lewis, he is not biased. In The Blind Side, Michael Lewis provides a compelling book explaining how the subtle game has changed as a balance of power has shifted between talented athletes and clever, devoted coaches. But you haven't really answered the question. The question is he biased or is he not biased, and why or why not? So you have to look at those things that we talked about in class. Do you think that the writer spent too much time in one part of the story and not enough in another? And in that case, did he show any evidence of bias? Does he use any words with negative connotations which might indicate his attitude toward the subject matter about which he's writing? So again, that handout that we talked about and that workshop that we discussed in looking at how to detect bias, I don't see you examining this part of the writing assignment through those lens. If you kind of understand what I'm saying, you've kind of said that he presents a compelling book. So the quotes that you use here, you say, with men this is impossible, with God all things are possible. You're saying that he claims that things can and will be difficult, but with God on your side, all things are possible. Again, you're simply explaining what the quote means. You're not really explaining why it is or is not biased. So really, you haven't in any way answered that third part of a writing assignment. So that thing just kind of went over your head a little bit. So you should think a little bit more about what that is and what I was trying to ask you to do. Part 4 with paragraph 8, I think is decent. I think you've done the job there. You've answered the question, you did your survey, you reported those results, so that's not bad. So overall, I think your grade is 70 out of 100. The summary could be a little bit more organized. I think that you could have more directly and more thoughtfully and more critically, I think, explain why you think the writer is not biased and provide some examples or some quotes from the passage and then analyze those with the intent of showing that there wasn't any bias in those particular quotes. So you didn't really deal with that. That's probably the biggest weakness in the paper. But still, overall, you kind of did the writing assignment more or less. You had success with certain parts. I think part 1 and part 4, and not as much success with part 2 and part 3. All righty? Thank you for doing the writing assignment.